Alright, so we have our sliders HTML and CSS complete. So now we need to add some JavaScript, or we're going to be using jQuery. Alright, so let's go to our JavaScript file, and we're going to be using jQuery, and one of the things we need to do is, since we're including it, actually we didn't even include our JavaScript file. Let's make sure we do that. So script src js/script.js. Alright, now we're including it at the top. So in order to use jQuery and grab elements down here, we have to use something called document ready. Alright, so document.ready. Alright, and this is going to just make sure that everything is loaded first, and then we can go in and do our jQuery. Alright, so in here we want to put a self-calling function. Alright, and then everything we do is going to go in here. Okay, and let's just test it out by just sending an alert. Okay, actually we'll just put some text in here. We'll say doc is loaded. Okay, so if we go ahead and refresh, we get doc is loaded. Alright, so what we want to do first is we're going to set some of our options, or variables, whatever you want to call them. Alright, we're going to have just a couple. We're going to have a variable called speed, and I'm going to set this to a default of 500. That's going to be the speed from transition to transition. So when you click the right arrow or left arrow, the speed from which it'll change to the next image. This is actually milliseconds, so we're going to make it a half a second. Next is going to be a variable called auto switch, and that's going to just be a true or false if we want it to go by itself. Okay, we're going to set that to true, and we should probably just comment these. We'll just say fade speed, auto slider option, and then let's do another one. Whoop. And this will be auto switch speed, and I'm going to set this to 4,000 milliseconds. Okay, so that's our options. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to add the class of, actually, you know what? In our index, I put active here, but we can actually insert it through jQuery just to make our HTML a little cleaner. Now we just have the same div class slide for all of them. Alright, so what we're going to do here is get the first slide. Alright, so let's say add initial active class. Alright, so we're going to use the jQuery symbol, which is the $, and we want to get the slide class. We want to get the first one. Okay, so the first slide div. And then we just want to add class. We're going to add the class active to the first one. Alright, next thing I want to do is hide all slides. Okay, hide and we can do that like this. Slide, there should be a dot. Okay, so slide dot hide. Alright, so now I reload, none of our sliders are showing. Well, we want this, but we want the first one to show. And we now know that the first one has a class of active because we added it here. Alright, so we'll say show first slide. So we'll grab it by its class of active, and we'll say show. Okay, so now if we go and reload, now the first slide shows. Alright, so what we want to do next is we want to make it so that when we click this arrow, it goes to the next, it fades to the next one. Alright, so to do that, we need to use an event handler. Okay, so the div that we want to use for the button, it has an ID of next. Alright, so we're going to say next, and then I'm going to say dot on. Okay, and then the first parameter of on is going to be click. Okay, so we're saying when the next div, when the item inside of the next div is clicked, then we want to run a function. Alright, and then we'll put what we want in here. So let's just do a little test and say alert, and we'll say next was clicked. Okay, so save, and then if we go back and reload, click the next arrow, we get next was clicked. Alright, so everything we want to do when that's clicked goes in this function. And the first thing I want to do is take the active class off of the current image. Alright, so to do that, we need to grab the class active. Alright, and we're going to say dot remove class, which is a jQuery function or method. Alright, and we're going to remove the class of active. Alright, and then we're going to add another class of old active. Okay, so we know that this image, this is the last image that had the active class. Alright, and then we're going to do a little conditional here. And what we'll do is say if old active is, say dot is, which is a jQuery method, and then we're going to say last, we're going to use the last child selector. Okay, so if old active is the last child, which means it's the last slide, then we want to go back to the first. Alright, so we'll say dot slide dot first, so that first slide, and then we're going to add the active class to that. Oops, add class active. Okay, because if we're on the last slide and we click the next arrow, we want the first to come back in. So that's why we're saying the first add class active. And then we're going to add an else statement here. Alright, because if it's not the last child, then we just want to go to the next one. Okay, so we'll say oops, dot old active dot next add class. Okay, and we're going to add the active class. Alright. Then after that, we want to remove the old class altogether. Alright, so old active dot remove class old active. Alright, and then once we're done with all the class shifting, we can actually fade out. We're going to take the dot slide and do dot fade out. Okay, so the fade out method takes a speed parameter, which we have up here. Okay, so we have this variable speed. We're going to use that here. All right, and then we want to make sure that the active class is the one that's coming in. Okay, so we'll say active dot fade in. And it'll have that at the same speed. Alright, so that should do it for us. Let's go ahead and test it. Reload. Okay, so now we click next, and you can see that now we're on the last slide, slider 5, and we click next. It goes back to 1. Alright, that's what we did right here. Alright, so that's the next functionality. So now let's do the previous. Alright, so what I'm going to do is grab this whole thing, okay, and paste this in, and just change next to previous. Alright, and we want to take this next right here and say previous, because jQuery has a previous method which works just like the next method, except it's the one before. And I think that's it. I think that'll do it. So let's reload, go forward, go backwards. Looks like we have some kind of problem here. Okay, 5, go back. It goes back to 1. That's because this last child needs to be first child now. Alright, and let's try that. Okay, we got 1, 2, 2, 3, go back to 1. Okay. Okay, that's because this first should now be last. Okay, we're just doing everything in reverse. And I think that should do it. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, go back, goes to 5. Oh, I forgot the dot right here, an old active. Alright. Reload, so 1 should go to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alright, go forward. Alright, perfect. Alright, so now what I want to do is the auto slider, because you can see now it's just, we have to click the arrows. We can't, it's not doing it automatically. Alright, so what we need to do is use the set interval function. Alright, so let's go down here, and what we need to do is check to make sure if we want it to auto slide. So we need to use an if statement here. Alright, we're going to say if, and the variable is called auto switch. So we'll say if auto switch is equal to true. Alright, then what do we want to do here? We want to call the set interval function. Alright, so this is going to take a function. Okay, it's going to take a function, and then we want a comma, and then the speed. Alright, and we have that in a variable as well, auto switch speed. Alright, now what we want in this function is the whole next functionality here. So if we copy this and put that right in here, okay, and let's go reload. Okay, so you see now it's changing automatically. Alright, but this here can be optimized, because again, we have repeating code. Okay, so this whole next functionality is in here. So what we want to do here is I'm going to set some functions. I'm going to create some functions to add into these event handlers instead of having a self-calling function like this. Alright, so let's create a function down here. Let's give a comment here, and we'll say this function will switch to the next slide. Alright, so we'll say function next slide. Alright, and what I'm going to do is go to this next event handler, and inside of this function I want to take everything and then go down and paste it in here, and then go back to the next handler and take away this whole function including its curly braces and just stick in there next slide. All right, and we'll say next handler. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the previous slide. Okay, so we'll grab this. Where is it? Okay, put that in there, and then we can get rid of this function, and we'll just put previous slide. Alright, so now we can go to this set interval, take out this function, and just put in next slide. So auto slider handler. Alright, and I forgot the dot again here. Make sure that you have this dot in this old active class, or it won't work. So save, let's reload, and go forward. Okay, good. Backwards. Okay, looks like auto slide's working. Alright, so it's working perfect. Good. So that's it. You always want to optimize your code the best you can. This is pretty good. We have all our handlers in one spot, and then we have our functions down here. We have our options, so it's nicely coded. Alright, so that's it. You've built your jQuery content slider. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.